The one starts when I start the goddamn speed. When I start the Isaac one. Because I'm going to be doing the fastest Isaac one in the Binding of Isaac. Without the D9, or whatever that dice he has. D4 or whatever it's called, because I don't have that yet. Okay. So. Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck? One, this is a speed run, so I have to do this fast. Two, I've never beaten the Binding of Isaac as Isaac. That's it, thank you. Oh, good to know it's stuck. You know what's all about, let's go! Little toe, baby! You know what's all about, let's go! You know what's all about, let's go! Little toe, baby! You know what's all about, let's go! Yes. Here's something. That guy just couldn't just said it's big right now. Take it. Come on, buddy. Let's go. Big one, baby. Please, 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 give me the devil one. Give me the devil deal. Devil deal. Yes. Please, 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 please. No. How did I miss you? I love the fact that I'm trying to speedrun a game. That the only character I can beat it fast with is the one I'm not allowed to use for the speedrun. Because this is an Isaac speedrun. Woo! Speedrun as Isaac. It's time to die, not allowing you to live. I did not give you permission to live. Where are you? I just hate it when you get so scared you revert back to monkey. Damn, I got scared. Screw it, I need it. Oh, fuck. Come on, I can't, I just can't take any more damage. Thank you. Need something else? Nope, okay. Got a little too greedy. I'm seeing stars. Son of a bitch. Son of a fucking bitch. Suck my dick, game. Suck my dick. Fucking bitch. So until I'm pissed off right now, I just got hit, so I ain't getting no double deal. I have a 36% chance of getting a double deal, not 100. So thank you, game, for making me sad and mad. I won't be glad, because my name is not Tad. Who would name their kid Tad? Attempt number 2. Please, something good. I hate you, game. Fastest is a 1. I'm sure Logan holds the world record for that by just hitting one button, the game ends. Thank you. Summon him. Fucking fuck. Die. I said die. Give me this. One makes you small, thank you. I like being small. Just kidding. I think when I realize how tall I am, I should not think I'm short at all, but for some reason I still think I am short. Because of how used I am to everyone around me being taller than me. Even my own younger cousin, who was born 2 years after I was. As you can tell, I have a fun time when it comes down to my height, because so many people that are younger than me are awfully taller than me. And it makes me very mad and pissed off that I am not taller than someone very oftenly. Item room, please. Thank you. Die. Thank you for Cricket's head. Is it what you're waiting for? Now, animal baby. This is all about the ball. Wow. Whoa.
My sight, but I'm not a rep. These niggas say, okay, overslept. My BC clutch because she emerged. Whenever I'm down, she give me a perk. The police pull up, my gun in her purse. The ops pull up, put him on the shirt.
Country Boss is just fucking whole another level. Like the guy that whatever his name was, Francis Ngannou could not knock out, he made go on out cool. Unwanted champs. Me. I wasn't wanted.
T-Mobile makes as much sense as taking a family road trip in a covered wagon.
I mean,
are we gonna have coverage on this trip?
Oh, we'll be covered. T-Mobile 5G covers more highway miles in America.
Well, they mean champions that Dana did not want to be the champ. Just not wanted it in total.
More 5G bars in more places. Another reason T-Mobile is the leader in 5G.
Your mother. How dare you say your mother? That's so mean. Mother you. Yep, 10 fighters Dana White never wanted as champion. Clinton. Right, again.
As much as Dana White would love for all of his champions to make him buckets of cash and be super easy to work with, that's just not the reality of the UFC. So today we thought it would be fun to take a look at 10 title holders the promotion's president absolutely could not stand and didn't want as champion. We're not saying they never got along, but these 10 fighters wore divisional crowns and in part or entirely pissed off the boss in doing so. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the top 10 fighters Dana White never wanted as champion.
Number 10. Fabricio Verdum.
Yep.
When Verdum defeated Fedor Emelianenko at Strikeforce in 2010,
he broke one of the all-time greatest winning streaks in MMA history. Dana White had long-running issues with Fedor. In their most recent history, a fight with Brock Lesnar that had fallen apart. And when asked about Fabricio's win, White used Verdum's past to drive a stake into his rival.
Everybody's talking about how great this guy is. No, he's not. Then he goes in and loses to Verdum, a guy who we cut from the UFC for losing.
But that loser they cut eventually came back to the UFC after Strikeforce was absorbed by Zuffa and found himself on a 5-fight win streak with an interim heavyweight title for his troubles. His next opponent would be the man Cain Velasquez, the two-time UFC champion who was on a 4-fight run of his own with 2 epic beatdowns of Junior Dos Santos, and after a long layoff due to injury, the promotion was looking to make a huge push in the Mexican market utilizing the champion's heritage in their second ever show in Mexico City. Unfortunately for Dana White, the UFC reject ruined all that when he took it to Cardio Cain at an increased elevation and stole his title in the 3rd round. The UFC has not held a pay-per-view in Mexico since. Number 9. George St. Pierre. You either die a hero or you live long enough to piss Dana off. GSP was certainly good business for the UFC during his reign as welterweight champion, and during those times, St. Pierre and DFW got along just fine. But following his controversial victory over Johnny Hendricks at UFC 167, George announced he was planning on taking some time away, and just like that, there was trouble. White was fuming about the judge's decision post-fight.
I'm blown away that George St. Pierre won that fight. Does anybody here think that Johnny Hendricks didn't win the fight?
More so than the decision, the UFC president was having none of the champion's desire to take a break.
You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt, you owe it to this company, and you owe it to Johnny Hendricks to give him that opportunity to fight again.
White would later, while not revealing them, dismiss GSP's reasons for needing time away.
You know, he's very emotional about some shit that's going on with him right now, and It's really not that bad.
A month later, George vacated his title and left this giant disaster behind him for a few years.
Wasn't his
he would
dad,
return
like,
in 2017,
incredibly
moving
ill?
up to middleweight to take the title from Michael Bisping at UFC
Or dying?
217. One of the stipulations of getting that fight was that GSP would have to defend against Robert Whittaker if he won. George vacated again, having fought Bisping with a digestive disease. White was not surprised.
There's a reason I put that stuff in the contract for him to sign. There's a reason. Am I shocked? I don't think anybody's shocked.
Talk started heating up in 2018 about a second return and a lightweight title fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. But after St. Pierre's official retirement that next year, he revealed the UFC ultimately shot down the idea of the fight for fear that GSP would again vacate the title should he win. This is all very recent, so literally right now, White doesn't want George as a champion. Number 8, Tim Sylvia. Widely considered to reign over one of the weakest heavyweight divisions in the history of the promotion, Tim Sylvia wasn't exactly breaking pay-per-view records by the time he matched up with a recently unretired 43-year-old Randy Couture at UFC 68. To give you some perspective on White's position, Sylvia didn't even headline in his previous title defense despite being a champion in the heaviest weight. This had only happened 2 other times since Dana took over the promotion, and one of those times was again with Sylvia at UFC 44. In a classic moment, the underdog Couture absolutely dominated Sylvia all fight, and as per White, saved the heavyweight division. Things got worse though. By that next year, Tim wanted a shot at Brock Lesnar and wanted Brock Lesnar pay. When Dana said no, he asked out of his contract and was granted his release, something that almost never happens in the UFC, further demonstrating how little they valued their former champion. After being stopped by Fedor in 36 seconds at Affliction Band later that year, White told Yahoo Sports, "We all have to thank him for getting rid of Tim Sylvia. He's been stinking up the joint the last couple years, and Fedor did everyone a favor by beating him so easily and getting rid of him." In 2012, Sean Shelby had put into motion an attempt to re-sign Tim in the newly acquired Strikeforce, but White vetoed the return, saying nobody cares about Tim Sylvia. Number 7, Jermaine Durandamy. Dana White was pretty sour after UFC 208.
What was the highlight for you?
Plane ride home.
The whole show was a bit of a dud, and not only did the main event not deliver, it ended in controversy after Jermaine Durandamy hit Holly Holm twice after the horn and was deducted no points. The foul should have warranted a draw in this inaugural featherweight title fight, which, according to Dana, would have been
The only possible way this night could be
White rarely matchmakes post-fight, or at least doesn't like to, but on this night there was no doubt who was next. Chris Cyborg, the woman they built the division for in the first place. GDR had a rough start to her title run, but a big fight with one of the best of all time could certainly put her back in everyone's good graces. A week after Durandamy won the title, Cyborg was cleared of any wrongdoing for a potential USADA doping violation, and with that final hurdle out of the way, the bout was tentatively scheduled for UFC 214 in June. But that May, the Iron Lady released a statement through her management that she refused to fight Cyborg due to her past with PEDs. This went over about as well as New Coke, at least at the time. We'll get back to that later. The backlash from fans and media was constant, and a few weeks later, Dana White had had enough. Durandamy was stripped of her title, ending her 128-day reign. In an official statement, the UFC said champions are expected to accept fights against the top contenders in their respective weight classes in order to maintain the integrity of the sport. Number 6, Nico Montano. It's pretty incredible for a fighter to go from their UFC debut to Dana White being completely done with them in less than a year's time, but here's Nico Montano. After winning TUF 26 to become the inaugural flyweight champion, Montano simply had nothing but trouble. Her first title defense was meant to be against super popular axe-murdering Kyrgyzstani Valentina Shevchenko, who had recently moved to flyweight and brutalized Priscilla Castreda, but a surgery would leave the champion sidelined. Ariel Helwani would report that the UFC was getting tired of waiting on Nico and were looking to have her fight the Bullet in July, but Montano was not going to be ready until October, so she was scheduled for a fight in September, and as a result was way past weight going into fight week, eventually being hospitalized during her cut. 10 months after her debut and being crowned champion, White made this announcement.
Yeah, she didn't make weight. I mean, that's pretty much it. The title is vacated, so it's a vacant title right now.
Montano would take to social media to point out how many champions have gone longer without being stripped, but White's all-star in Shevchenko, and they weren't going to wait any longer. Valentina won the vacant title that December, a year after Nico's debut. Number 5, Colby Covington. At first, it would have seemed that Colby Covington was exactly the type of champion Dana White would want. He was brash and in your face. He caused all kinds of chaos on the microphone. But a clash with the boss would nearly clip his wings before he ever flew. The trouble started after he captured interim gold against Rafael dos Anjos. Dana White wanted him to fight rival Tyron Woodley 3 months later at UFC 228. But Covington had planned a surgery to correct a sinus issue and rejected the offer. After the fight failed to materialize several more times, White wanted Colby to fight Kamaru Usman, but Covington wasn't in the contender business anymore and rejected the fight. So Dana gave Usman the title shot against Woodley instead at UFC 235 and stripped Colby, who went on a media tour bashing White and the UFC.
Everybody knows I ain't got nothing to say to Uncle Fester.
Next, Colby invaded 235's fight week, harassing Usman with a bullhorn and in a now infamous video, confronting Dana at a blackjack table while waiting outside the casino next to White's car. The UFC president wasn't too impressed.
I offered you the fight. You know I offered you the fight. You could have took it. Now you're gonna have to wait.
400 plus days after winning the interim title, Covington would try to get back in the UFC's good graces by taking a short notice fight with Robbie Lawler while champion Usman was out with an injury. After dominating the fight, there was no doubt he was next in line, and a title bout was scheduled for December, which he would go on to lose. After all that, you'd have to wonder how Dana felt about Covington, and his response when asked to comment on Colby telling the media he would get White in the head with the title if he tried to put it around his waist says it all.
Good luck with that. He's a big motherfucking idiot.
Number 4, Amanda Nunes. When Dana White gave a tour of his offices at the new UFC HQ, a huge image of Amanda Nunes featured prominently on one of the walls. And while the two are now thick as thieves, with White appreciating her accomplishments as the greatest female fighter ever, things were not always that way. Amanda Nunes played the ultimate spoiler. Ronda Rousey was a promotional cash cow, and a rematch to regain her title from Holly Holm would break records. That was until Holm decided she wanted to fight Miesha Tate while waiting for Rousey, a decision White was not happy about because the worst possible outcome came true when Tate pulled out a final round Hail Mary choke to win the fight. So they lost the huge rematch, but at least Tate was Ronda's most bitter rival. The return would still be huge. Tate was given a fight to bolster her title reign at UFC 200 against measly number 4, Amanda Nunes. Oops, Nunes decimated Miesha. Now all the UFC had was Ronda's coming back. And damn did they push that. Amanda was barely featured in any of the promotion leading up to the fight. It's a wonder she was even on the poster. There was no doubt who Dana and company wanted to win this one. So long as Rousey performed, Ronda Mania would be running wild again in no time. Instead, Nunes beat Rousey worse than Holly did, forcing the Golden Goose to retire. Sometimes these things happen in MMA. Number 3, Demetrius Johnson. A few years into the UFC flyweight division's existence, there were two things that were
There's a new world out there. It's a world where you can tackle heavy lifting with the push of a button. A world where you
Me and my dad, and pretty much everyone else that was at my dad's thought Mighty Mouse beat Cejudo in their second fight. Like we were all shocked when Cejudo turned out to be the winner, because that was the first ever UFC pay-per-view I ever watched. Was Cejudo. Was DC, Miocic, and I think Cejudo, what's his name, was on there? Cejudo Mighty Mouse was on there as well. When me and my dad heard the scorecards,
Demetrius Johnson was the best 125er in the world.
and found out Mighty Mouse had lost, we were like,
despite being literally
no.
the most successful UFC champion of all time,
We could not agree with it. We did not agree.
Not drawing in the numbers the promotion was looking for. And for years, according to White, there was consideration for dropping the division entirely. Frankly, there still is that consideration, but the glue that everyone felt was keeping the division together at the time was DJ. He was too good to get rid of, right? In the lead up to his record-setting 11th title defense, Johnson got caught up publicly with UFC brass about a potential fight with TJ Dillashaw. Demetrius wrote an open letter laying out all of his issues with the TJ fight and his treatment by the promotion over the years. White responded by pointing out Johnson's poor pay-per-view numbers and questioned his position as the pound-for-pound #1 in the world. Ultimately, DJ would fight and defeat Ray Bullock, afterwards saying he was open to a super fight for a few million. Dana wasn't a fan of the idea.
Listen, you can't be in a position where you're like, I want $2 million, fuck you, I don't care what you make.
Seemingly untouchable while still winning, Johnson's loss to Henry Cejudo at UFC 227 was the final nail in the coffin. Rather than cut one of the best fighters in history still in his prime, PFW opted to trade him to one championship for Ben Askren. Number 2, Chris Cyborg. Holy shit, where to start with this one? How about 2012 when Cyborg popped for steroids and was stripped of the Strikeforce title? A few months later, Ronda Rousey would make her bantamweight debut in the promotion, many fans believing she did so to avoid a bout with Chris. From here, their paths diverged. Cyborg was sent to Invicta, and Rousey became the biggest star in the UFC. But the calls for a Cyborg-Rousey fight never went away. The response was always the same by Dana and Ronda, though. Make 135 and we'll do it. Along the way, both took shots at Cyborg's appearance, Rousey calling Chris an it in a Yahoo interview, and Dana, when asked about Ronda's comments, giving this infamous reply.
When I saw her at the MMA Awards, she looked like Vanderlei Silva in dress and heels.
For years, it was the same line. White would make the fight today if Cyborg could make 135. Many fans felt like the UFC was simply protecting Ronda, but things started coming together in 2015 when Chris signed with the UFC. Immediately, they ran into some trouble. Cyborg was basically dying making catchweight 140, and Ronda lost her title. A shift towards a featherweight division specifically for Cyborg finally lightened things up between White and his new 145-pound champion, but they would sour again once Amanda Nunes shocked the world and KO'd Cyborg in less than a minute at UFC 232. One fight later, a victory over Felicia Spencer, Chris's contract was up. Post-fight, Cyborg was calling for a new contract and a rematch with Nunes, a fight Dana said Chris didn't actually want. This is when things went off the rails. Cyborg posted a doctored video of White backstage on her YouTube channel where it appeared as if he was saying he was lying about her, and that was really the last straw. After years of contention, Dana released a video explaining his side of their long, complex history, and it hilariously citing GDR's fears about Cyborg's PED use, and then ended their relationship with this simple phrase.
We're out of the Cyborg business.
Chris went on to Bellator and is their current featherweight champion. It's probably safe to say this one is over for good. Number 1, Tyron Woodley. White and Woodley have a long vocal history, and while they've at times made buddy-buddy, it's mostly been beef. The UFC president has been regularly critical of the former welterweight champion throughout his career, and Tyron's been more than happy to fire back. Before he even held the title, White wasn't a fan of Woodley's safe style.
So Tyron's got a ways to go. Seems like he chokes in the big fights.
After he shockingly KO'd Robbie Lawler to capture the strap at UFC 201, things didn't improve. Frustrated with how he was being marketed in the lead-up to UFC 205, Woodley famously told ESPN that he was the worst treated champion in UFC history, and in part attributed this to his race, which prompted Dana to call him a drama queen who drove away fans. The beef between the two didn't get any better after his rematch with Stephen Thompson shit the bed, and soured further after another boring defense against Damian Maia.
When you get booed out of an arena, these people don't want to watch you fight. You know?
Woodley fired back at White, saying if he didn't get treated better, he'd start spilling UFC dirt. A long layoff due to injury would end with Tyron mopping the floor with Darren Till, a fighter the UFC was priming to be a big star. Much was made of White's expression prior to giving the champion his belt, and he was absent from the post-fight press conference. Then there was the failed Nate Diaz fight beef. White accused Woodley of holding up the division with minor injuries, several times denying a fight with Colby Covington. On and on. There's almost too much to mention. They were seemingly never on the same page, and now that Woodley has dropped the strap to Usman, it'll be interesting to see what it's going to take for him to earn a shot, given Dana and Tyron's history. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe. We've got 3 new videos or more for you every single week. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Huge shout out to Max Randall for editing this video together. Follow him on Twitter at Max_Randall. Follow On Point MMA on Twitter, and have yourself a wonderful day.
I'm in no JD commercial!
What is going on, guys? It is WrestleMania here, back with another video. Wrestling, there are always those unwritten in our rankings that we're expected to follow as part of the story. Exactly, despite being on his age and in much better physical shape, we get sick to imagine Angel Garza beating The Undertaker, as well as The Undertaker has built up a higher power level. The same could also be said for the likes of Goldberg, Triple H, John Cena, and many others. Well, the rest of the games have their own power levels to them. sometimes there are characters that are somewhat overpowered, making the game altogether difficult to play whenever they're involved. Some of these are more justified than others, but they all have one thing in common. They're a hell of a challenge, sometimes even impossible to beat. So be sure to subscribe and click on that notification bell, as today we're looking at 10 of the most overpowered wrestlers in wrestling video games.
No, goddammit.
Number 1, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg in Here Comes the Pain. If you switched on WWE television today and tried to figure out who were the most overpowered characters on the roster, you would undoubtedly decided on Brock Lesnar and Phil Goldberg. Well, even as far back as 2003, this was the case too. Seems to a nigh on impossible to put down one of fights that in SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Of course, this was years before Brock entered the Undertaker's streak. Goldberg would squash a good portion of the WWE roster half his age, and they were both as superpowered main eventers, so it just kind of made sense. Unless you're selecting a fighter who had camera stats, you would have to see great endless moves to just get one of their limbs to switch over to yellow damage, and that was only the start of wearing them down. What made it even more unbalanced was that neither of them could put you in that state with just 2 or 3 moves, making matches very lopsided. We applaud anyone who managed to beat them. Number 2, Takamichinoku in No Mercy. Well, April Fool's Day has come and gone, and you might be telling yourself, we played No Mercy until our fingers bled. You don't remember Takamichinoku being that hard to beat. Well, there is a caveat to this one. It only applies during the Royal Rumble matches or general battle royals. For some bizarre reason, if you encountered Tucker during one of these matches, it was nearly impossible to eliminate. I'm not quite sure why this was, and we've been curious to know if everyone else felt the same way. This was one of the biggest challenges we've ever come across in a WWE game. It's not like Tucker was known for being good in battle royals either. In fact, maybe his most famous moment on the roster, with the exception of Choppy Choppy or BB, was seeing him face planted spectacularly after being held out of the ring during the 2000 Rumble. Regardless, if I could try this one out, you might be surprised. Number 3, Triple H in No Mercy. No, we're not done with No Mercy just yet. Those who played through the game's story mode, remember that if you got to the stage of fighting the game at WrestleMania, then he would suddenly go Super Saiyan, by his standards, and start reversing almost every move you threw at him. This one could be justified as you're just trying to win at WrestleMania, biggest show of all, so it makes sense that the difficulty would be ramped up here, but it's suspicious that it's the notoriously protective Triple H who is the one who gets to be unbeatable. The stories we've heard in the past about him not being able to look weak in promotional material for games in the WWE 2K series.
That is true.
It would be the only time that Triple H was this powerful either, so it's equally difficult to topple in the GameCube exclusive Day of Reckoning 2. Except for the video game world at least, Triple H really is the King of Kings. Number 4, Stone Cold Steve Austin in Warzone. To call 1998's Warzone a classic may be a bit of a stretch. It certainly was a popular title back in the day, as it came right at the time that the Attitude Era was starting to explode into the mainstream. Of course, the top star of the day, and perhaps the top star of all time looking back on it, was Stone Cold Steve Austin. With this in mind, it only made sense that he would be one of the toughest characters to beat. However, for as difficult as the base game version of him was to take down, there was also a special unlockable version available to players which had all of his stats maxed out, making taking him on essentially the equivalent of fighting Godzilla and King Kong combined. Okay, maybe it wasn't that dramatic, but it certainly made him a challenge to defeat. Let's be honest though, few people were fighting against Steve Austin in this game, because most of us were playing as him, or at least fighting with our friends over who got to choose him first. Number 5, The Big Show in Day of Reckoning. We've already mentioned it earlier that Day of Reckoning 2 featured a hugely overpowered version of Triple H. The original title,
God damn it.
fair share of this, the former of The Big Show. Now, The Big Show looks like someone who should be overpowered on the level of an Andre the Giant. For a variety of reasons, he never really reached this status in the WWE. Well, then, he got there in the video game world, because if you played through the story mode here and you chose to go to SmackDown, you'd find that your first match was against the mighty himself. For some reason, this CPU decided to ramp itself up in the sky.
Fuck. I know.
My job is to make college easier because students have a lot on their plates. Like Harper, an econ major who piles on the pressure. Grammarly can help her stress less.
This term paper's gotta be great.
I quit. I fucking quit. Thank you. Fuck yeah, one. I fucking hate it.
High levels here, the show became an absolute nightmare to beat. God forbid you choose a light heavyweight wrestler too, because if you did, you were going to have an even more difficult time here, because a lot of your moves simply weren't going to work on him since your character didn't have the strength to execute them properly. Damn you weight detection physics. This allowed him to simply reverse the moves, or not seldom at all. Yeah, to say this one was a challenge is an understatement. Number 6, The Great Khali in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. When SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 rolled out, 2K had tweaked the weight detection system to make it more realistic. Now this wasn't a bad move in itself, but where it did make things difficult though, was with the inclusion of The Great Khali. Given his gargantuan size, was put in a weight class all of his own, allegedly 2 classes higher than the next heaviest person on the roster. Now this is realistic as Khali is up there with the very few like Andre the Giant or Giant Gonzalez, who would be classed as a truly super heavyweight wrestler, but it did make it pretty much impossible to fight unless you chose to play as a heavyweight yourself. Choose anyone below this level, you are pretty much guaranteeing that most of your moves wouldn't work on him, so we pity the Rey Mysterio fans out there. Even if you did choose a heavyweight, it wasn't exactly a walk in the park, as he still presented a hell of a challenge. It's a shame Khali wasn't a better wrestler in reality, because with his imposing size, he really could have been something special if he'd given the company something more to work with. Number 7, John Cena in WWE 2K17. John Cena has certainly earned the nickname Big Match John for his 1980s Hulkamania level of wrestling superpowers, which saw him beat pretty much everyone on the roster, much to the chagrin of many fans at the time. By the time 2K17 came out, Cena's legend status was well and truly established. It was accepted that to beat him on WWE television, you would pretty much have to throw a tank at him for the most part, as he always overcame the odds. This was reflected in that year's game.
I quit.
Players reported having a very difficult time.
I quit. That's the end of the stream. Goodbye.